what a lot of folks see as totally unjust actions, but tearing up a city or hurting people can't be the way to go. Let's go now over to Katie Jeffries. And Katie, one thing I've seen on social media that people are really talking about, some people are saying, please don't say protest. These are rioters. And so there's definitely a kind of war with words tonight, not protesting, but getting out of control.
Right. There's a lot of different comments going on, of course, on social media. And we have all of our team of reporters out there on social media as well, kind of tweeting, talking about what they're seeing. In fact, David Jones, just a few moments ago, he's actually out at the town center because there had been talk that maybe protesters might move towards the town center. He said that he had seen the town center kind of starting to clear out. He'd seen more officers in that area, and that some restaurants at the town center were not taking any new customers at this point. So people kind of waiting and seeing what's going on. I actually had a friend who was at the town center texted me and said their waiter warned them that there could be protesters possibly headed that way, so they kind of left the area as well. So we have crews out at the town center watching that situation as well. Now, something, Jeannie, like you were talking about, they said there have been many arrests. A lot of people want to know, are these people local who were arrested, or are they from outside the area, which is, of course, something we'll be following up on once we can get some of those records to find out if those people arrested were local or if they were from outside the area. Also, as you saw with Ken, their supervisor of elections office, there has been some damage. The front door looked like it had been busted in. He said there was damage to the windows as well. So we do know there has been some damage to buildings in the downtown area. Now, at the moment, it was raining pretty hard here in the downtown area. It was also raining pretty hard at the town center. So maybe that has helped kind of clear people out a little bit. This is a look here from Tagboard. So this is tweets that are coming in from people around the area. It looks like Khalif said, peaceful protest against Jacksonville police turns violent. And here's another one, say Jacksonville didn't even protest right. And we know that the protest, the 3 o'clock protest, which was downtown, had about 1,200 people. That one was peaceful. They said around 6:30 is when this started to take a turn. Here's one from Juliana. A peaceful protest in Jacksonville today ended with the protesters. Oh, I didn't get to finish that one, sorry. Jay Smith said, at Lenny Curry and JSO, thank you for protecting Jacksonville. So a lot of people are talking on social media right now, of course, watching these images come in. This person says we don't need another Minneapolis. And of course, I think everybody's hoping it doesn't come to the level of damage that we saw in Minneapolis to downtown. And Jeannie, as you've been saying, it does seem like things have started to calm down in downtown Jacksonville, but we do know there is, of course, still a heavy police presence if you are in the downtown area. Here's another look from, it looks like maybe near the jail downtown. So you can see there were a lot of people out there earlier today. Here's another one. Protest in Jacksonville went south, tear gas, broken window. And unfortunately, yes, we did have an officer that was stabbed in the neck, and we are waiting for an update on his condition. This from our Ann Schindler, a person holding a sign saying enough is enough. And here's from Lenny Curry. Many today peacefully made their voices clear for justice. We hear you and we will work with you. But of course, he's advocating that damage will not be tolerated at this point. Here's another look at Laura and Forsyth. So this is, of course, through the downtown area. You can see this is, of course, earlier today before the sun went down. A lot of people, a lot of officers. The Fraternal Order of Police also posted on their site as well on Facebook. You could actually see some flames underneath a JSO car. So they tweeted out some pictures as well of damage being done to JSO squad cars, something that we've seen. Jeannie, I know you've showed the video several times of a man breaking the windows of a JSO vehicle. We were saying, you know, Ann Schindler and Ken Amaro both had heard that there might have been damage at the library. Ken drove around it. He didn't see any specific damage, but of course, when it gets dark out there, it can sometimes be hard to see if there's any broken windows or things like that. So we do have crews all over the area at the moment, and as we find out more information, we'll let you know. We have multiple crews over at the town center just in case, because we had been hearing that there might be protesters headed that way. And so, as our David Jones was saying, and our Haley Harrison is out there saying that things seem to have kind of cleared out. Not a lot of people around the town center at the moment because of kind of hearing those threats, those things on social media, and that some of the restaurants in that area were not taking any new customers. So we'll follow that closely. Jeannie, anything else comes in, I'll let you know and we'll bring it to you on air.
And Katie, let me ask you too, I mean, this is a chance for people to just express their feelings. You just kind of want to connect with other people and say what you think. I mean, a lot of us have lived in Jacksonville for a really long time. This is our home. So where is the best place, do you think, for people right now to join in on this conversation?
You know, I feel like these are the kind of moments a lot of people jump to Twitter, especially in breaking news situations. You tend to get the most, I feel like, up to date, the most information coming in on the Twitter platform. But we have seen, of course, Instagram very, very popular with videos, even Snapchat. I saw some videos on the called Snap Map feature where people were posting directly to that, where you could really see things that were happening through downtown. You saw the instances in that of the tear gas or some of the smoke, things like that. So that's all content coming from people who were really on the ground in it. So I'd say Twitter, I mean really Twitter, Facebook, even Snapchat at this point. You're getting a lot of images from people who were there as well. And of course our reporters are on those platforms as well.
That's right, and we invite you to go on your Facebook page, Katie, or your Twitter, or on my Facebook page. I'm getting a lot of discussion about what people think has happened tonight, their frustrations, and what they think should happen next. So please do join in the conversation. Now, here's what we do know at this hour. So it's 10:03 right now, according to the clock here in the studio. We started noticing the issues tonight about 6 o'clock. So the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is telling everybody still, please don't come downtown, don't take any chances. And so we've been watching tonight protesters clashing with Jacksonville police officers. Hopefully this has simmered down now. We're not seeing any bursts of activity or any major concern, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all over. But it does seem to be more of a peaceful resolution at this point, although we've had problems tonight. Tear gas fired at protesters, or some people say, Jeannie, please call them rioters. Whatever your choice of words is, tear gas fired at them. We've seen smoke in the area as well. JSO officer has been hospitalized. This is something we don't know a lot about, but we were given information by Jacksonville Sheriff Mike Williams that a police officer was stabbed in the neck. And all we can do is just hope that that's not life-threatening. We don't know yet. So let's hope that didn't happen. But he clearly said that protesters had done that. So here's a man here vandalizing a police car. One of the Facebook viewers I have said that there's got to be something hard in that, underneath that cloth, like a crowbar type thing. And he said that if you just see it, how quickly that was able to bust out the windows. And I think if that video moves over just a bit, you can see the back of the car there. You saw that glimpse right there, totally smashed in. I don't know how many police cars are vandalized, although the sheriff did use the word in plural, cars vandalized, and some set on fire. There was smoke. That might be from the tear gas, but we did see photos coming in on social media with flames coming out of the back of one of the police cars. Also, we know that the sheriff said that lots of arrests have been made tonight. We won't find out those numbers right away, but it will be really interesting, and we will ask, I mean, what percentage of these people are from Jacksonville? What percentage are from out of town? What groups are they from? Was it one group that came down and organized some of this chaos tonight, and who are they? And that's something we don't know yet, but I'm sure you'd like to know too. I mean, who came into our city tonight and stirred up people, along with some people from Jacksonville. We've also seen damage to downtown buildings. Now, we had heard that the library had damage. We haven't confirmed that yet. Ken said he didn't see any, but he was standing outside the supervisor of elections office. If you've ever gone there to vote, you know that's off Monroe Street. Nobody there, thank goodness, but we have police officers there now because somebody or various protesters came and either busted out the windows by hand or somehow smashed the windows and did considerable damage at the supervisor of elections office. Of course, that's symbolic. I mean, that's our right to vote, our right to choose leaders. And it sounds as if somebody wanted to target that to send some kind of message, but in a very destructive way. Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry says that we are not going to let protesters burn our city down. So that's where the protest started tonight. And as we look at this video, that's when it was peaceful, but about a block and a half later, things started to get out of control. Ann Schindler is back on the phone tonight. Ann, what else can you tell us this evening?
Hey, Jeannie. You know, since I last talked to you, the police have cleared Bay Street, which has been pretty much barricaded all night. And, you know, it's free-flowing again, which, you know, was not the case for the last several hours. And so the city is opening up gradually. But as I'm discovering as I drive around right now, there's a lot of things that are closed. You know, the gas stations are closed and shuttered, and I think that was just a reaction. There was a lot of activity there earlier. The police officers that we spoke to told us it's just some tensions. So, but the city is quiet right now. I mean, the streets are pretty quiet. And as I'm driving around right now, I am not seeing any protesters or even really any pedestrians. It stopped raining, but it's peaceful out right now. And there's some, litter on Bay Street, but mostly just water bottles. I didn't see any, damage along that stretch of road where the main part of the protest was today. And I think it's worth pointing out that it was, a largely peaceful event. There was hundreds of people, as you saw earlier, marching and protesting outside the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office headquarters, and no damage there. And, that larger group of protesters really was very peaceful and well-behaved.
Well, and in comparison to what's happened in other cities, specifically Minneapolis, the damage there to the people's businesses and folks who were at no fault in any of this, losing their livelihoods. These are people who may have already been trying to struggle through the pandemic and maybe have lost their jobs, or their employees can't work there anymore. And now they're facing wrecked businesses. I mean, even larger stores. We saw like Target. It looked almost as if a hurricane had gone through and everything was just smashed and turned over. And but we don't want any violence in our city, even some broken windows and the threat of violence. 2 officers pinned down by a crowd tonight and 1 officer in the hospital, and I don't know what else yet. We may hear about more injuries, I hope not, but all of this is too much and the wrong way to go. But Ann, as we've been talking about, voices are heard. And so what do you think might be the next step in trying to take some action so that justice can be served in a better way in some people's minds?
Well, it's interesting, Jeannie. I mean, I lived in Minneapolis for a number of years, and I've been talking to, and it's my neighborhood that is, part of what's been, damaged and burned in the last couple of days. And so I hold that very close, but I will tell you, I've talked to a number of friends there who, it's a progressive place, it's a progressive city, and honestly, the people I've spoken to there are saying to me, yeah, it's a drag that the city has been burned and that businesses have been destroyed, but this is a larger societal issue, and there are very strong feelings about this issue, and society does not move or change with small measures, and I don't know that anybody is wanting to see any kind of violence. Obviously, nobody wants to see anybody get hurt or businesses destroyed, but this is something that's happening in every city because there are such strong feelings and such strong demands for change. So I just think that, we're grateful we're not seeing that in Jacksonville, the intensity, or the damage. I think that, we can all be happy that that's not occurring here. And at the same time, I think that the people that were out protesting today have the same kind of message that they want to get across.
Well, and of course, sometimes we think of Jacksonville not as one of the larger players as far as big cities in the country, but we are a significantly sized city. Obviously, some protesters chose to come here and include us, whether we wanted to be included or not, in the dozens of cities where there are protests right now. And Ann, you were telling us earlier that you actually spoke to some protesters or rioters or whatever people want to call them on the streets in downtown Jacksonville. What types of things were they telling you tonight?
Yeah, I would not call them rioters. I mean, I think there may have been a few people that were causing damage. The people that I spoke to were peaceful protesters. And many of them were young. I was talking with our colleague Ken Amaro about that earlier. There was, mostly 20s. There were some teenagers, a fair amount of teenagers and 20-year-olds. The younger people that I spoke to were saying that they wanted to not feel suspect, that they wanted to not feel like criminals in their own city, that they want to feel that they are able to live peacefully. And they even said to me, we can live peacefully. This is, we're not asking for conflict. We are asking for a peaceful existence, and we want to be able to, live in our own city and not feel like we're targeted. And so that was kind of what they were saying to me. There were some people that felt that there just isn't enough transparency with this police department. And, as the news media, I think we sometimes share that frustration. So, it wasn't, a completely outlandish concern. I think that there is room for more transparency with this agency, and certainly when it comes to things like body camera video for officer-involved shootings, I think that there is more that could be done at the early stages to get that video in a place where people can see it and still not imperil, the judicial process.
And you were talking about major societal shifts coming from events like this, when maybe some people look back to the civil rights movement, an effort to keep a lot of that peaceful, but some was not. But it got the attention, and it did change society. And a lot of people were saying maybe it takes something very drastic to make the changes that are necessary. Of course, with social media now and the viral videos that we've seen from Ahmaud Arbery's case and George Floyd's case in Minneapolis, clear as a bell that the police officer in Minneapolis, now an ex-officer, had his knee on George Floyd's neck, and Mr. Floyd died. And now that officer, ex-officer, is charged with murder. So with social media now, these things aren't so much debatable as they're clear. Question is what happens next. Ann, thank you so much. I've been told now from our producer that, and we'll get back with you, but let's go now to Robert Bradfield, who is somewhere downtown Jacksonville. Robert, have you moved locations? Can you tell us where you are? Hey, Robert, can you hear me? Great, thanks. We're not hearing Robert. Let's give him a second to get the audio fixed. He is up on a roof, I could see right now, obviously. So let's see if we can hear Robert and what his perspective. Robert?
Jeannie, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead. Thanks.
Okay. We are on top of a parking structure at the intersection of Main and Adams Street, and you can see the Main Street Bridge is back open. Adams Street is back open as well. Several of the streets that we were on, also Main Street earlier at the intersection of Beaver Street, reopened just after we wrapped our live shot earlier. I do want to just mention briefly what my colleague Ann Schindler was talking about, specifically the use of body camera video. I just got off the phone with Kimberly Austin. She's the mother of Jamie Johnson, who was shot and killed by a JSO officer in December. And she says the violence that she has seen and heard, specifically the violence to the JSO officer, she said she does not want to see that. She says there were peaceful protests earlier today with that caravan for justice that started at 3 o'clock. But she says this violence here in this city paints a bad picture for the history of Jacksonville. And she has a message for those that were on these streets today. And she said, we want to see peaceful protests. We do not want my son's death to be remembered this way. I just got off the phone with her, and she was emotional about that as well. So she just wanted to send that message that if there are protests, to keep it peaceful. But again, here tonight, Main Street and Adams Street is reopened. Jeannie.
As well, Robert, can you look around the other direction just a bit and tell us if it's stormy down there yet or rainy, or is that affecting what you think is going on?
It's no longer raining. I mean, we can see a little bit of rain on the blacktops from where we are. But there really is there's nobody walking around right now in downtown. You can see there are a couple cars that are stopped at the intersection here along Adams Street, but the roads are back open. We did see a group, it was a small group, maybe 3 or 4 younger adults, and going off again what Ann Schindler was saying, we saw them, they were probably in their 20s. But there was 3 or 4 of them, but we have not seen anybody since. But again, the roads downtown are reopened. It's not raining where we're at. It did rain, as we can see, but maybe because of the rain, the clouds have been dispersed. Jeannie?
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Robert. We'll get back with you in just a second. But right now, if we can go to Ben Frazier, who is on the phone right now. He is president of the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville and very involved in the problems and issues of our city, and has been for quite a while. Mr. Frazier, thank you for joining us tonight. Can you hear us?
Good evening. Good to hear your voice. It's been a long time, Jeannie.
It has. I've known you for years, Mr. Frazier. So first of all, just your reaction to what you've seen going on in downtown Jacksonville tonight.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I was just wondering what your reaction to what you've seen since you've lived here for so many years. What is your reaction to what's been happening downtown tonight?
Well, it's been absolutely appalling. As a matter of fact, I have one word and one message, and that is stop the madness. But I would like to set the scene, if you would, in terms of what happened today, because we had a very successful, very effective, one of the largest peaceful civil rights marches in the history of Jacksonville. We conducted a passionate but peaceful protest. In fact, it was so orderly that there are many children in attendance. It was family friendly. The protest lasted 2.5 hours. No problems, no confrontations. We explained we are a nonviolent organization. We explained that to the media, to law enforcement. And, you know, Jeannie, we're active, we're vocal, but we support nonviolent principles. Now, during the event, activists delivered passionate speeches. When the event was over, we thanked the protesters for their participation. Organizers dismissed and adjourned the event without a problem. Everybody went home.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what it must have been like when I got home, and I'm looking at people acting disorderly and acting in a fashion that we simply do not condone. We understand the angst and the anguish that people feel because of the horrific video of the murder of George Floyd. And yes, all this puts a spotlight, Jeannie, on racial injustice and on racial bias, the criminal justice system, on law enforcement here in Jacksonville, which we think is guilty of many wrongs. But again, to be clear, we do not condone violence, and we are very concerned about the welfare of everyone who lives here, regardless of race, creed, or color.
So, Mr. Frazier, this brings up a really big picture. I mean, the problems that we face now with racial injustice, they've gone back for so many years. Are you optimistic that we can make some progress? Any kind of new progress?
Most definitely. My faith is strong. Jacksonville is my hometown. I think that a city and individuals can change for the better. I think that the power structure, the mayor, the sheriff, the state attorney, they need to have a serious dialogue. They need to stop talking at us and start speaking with us. There are many wrongs. The sheriff has been deceptive and dishonest with regard to body cam footage. He has refused to release the footage to the people who own it, the public. They have hindered the public's right to know with regard to the body cam footage. Questionable police-involved shootings. Questionable racially disproportionate police-involved shootings. Excessive use of force. Brutality on the part of JSO directed at people of color and communities of color. Mike Williams shot in the back. $2 million verdict settlement. D'Angelo Stallworth, Kendra Austin. All of these people have been shot, killed, and nobody is asking a question. The media is remiss. You should have done a better job at covering some of these questionable shootings that have occurred not just over the years, but for generations. There's a problem with criminal justice system and race in the city. It is time for the mayor to sit down and have honest dialogue about these issues, or these kinds of problems are going to continue to crop up. We are going to continue our protest because we recognize that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. You've got judges, 55 circuit court judges, and only 4 of them black and only 1 a woman of color. Cronyism, nepotism, the old boys network. There's too much graft going on here, and people are turning their head and looking the other way as if it's okay. It's not okay. It's time for us to effect positive change. That's what we must do. So that, unfortunately, this kind of confrontation, this kind of angst, kind of forces and focuses us on this particular issue. We just need to sit down and talk. We can work it out. We've got to sit down and grab the bull by the horns and be solution-oriented.
And Mr.
Let's
Frazier, you're
work it out.
Yes, sir, and we appreciate, respect your opinion as well tonight. You mentioned solution orientation, And it seems like the use of body cams, the release of body cam video has come up over and over throughout this evening. You mentioned the media. Of course, we always try to do our best and we appreciate constructive criticism. Many times we ask for body cam video as a matter of public record, and we're told it's part of an investigation and cannot be released. So lots of things to talk about. And let me ask you this, without, and you don't want violence, you talk about it must be peaceful, but do you think without this violence that we can make the kind of progress that needs to be made?
I am hopeful that the shareholders, people in the public sector, the private sector, the public itself, that we will engage in honest dialogue. It's high noon. It's time for us to have that conversation. I think it can happen. My faith is strong. This is my hometown. And as I heard on your jingle, this is home.
It is home. I know I've lived here for many, many years, since 1985 too. It's my home too. And so, Mr. Frazier, let me just ask you one quick question, and we'll let you go. And we do appreciate your time tonight. But these protesters you talked about, and we've made this point over and over, how this started out as an organized, peaceful event, even with children, and then, as you said, that event concluded, and then things got out of hand. What can you tell us about the people who came in from out of town? Are you familiar? Was there a certain organization that sent people here tonight to cause problems? And I bet you'd like to know that if you don't know the answer. What can you...
No, I don't. I think that there are probably a lot of honest people who got drawn into it. There are different groups who have different agendas. I can only tell you that the two groups which organized this protest operated in a peaceful manner. There were no confrontations. We talked and joked with JSO for most of the day. There was no issue, no angst, no confrontation, no sense of combativeness at all. All I can tell you is that something happened. I don't know what.
And so from your leadership role, do you have any plans to try to find out who these people are and say something, give them a piece of your mind about what they've done in the city tonight?
No, we intend on staying on target, on mission, and on message. We stand up against any and all forms of social, racial, and economic injustice. With reference to people who are acting up and acting disorderly, that's the job for the police, not us.
All right. Well, Mr. Frazier, thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's Ben Frazier, who's president of the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville, been in this town for many, many years, as he said tonight. Let's go back now to Ken Amaro, who is live downtown. Ken?
Hey, Jenny, interesting conversation with Mr. Ben Frazier there, who's spoken for weeks now about JSO releasing the body cam videos as a form of transparency as to what's taking place. I'm downtown at 40 East Adams. It's the Jesse Ball DuPont Center. Years ago, it was the Hayden Burns Library. And look at what the vandals, if you want to call them that, look at what they did to the window pane here. This is a nonprofit agency that serves the community. A lady drove by and she goes, "Oh my God, really? Is this what they did?" But it's not just this building. In fact, across the street, that used to be Fire Station 1. It's now a private residence. And I know it's probably hard to see in the dark, but the window panes on the doors are all busted through. I don't know if the graffiti is new, but that's also damage from today's activities. And then you go across the street here. Again, I'm at Adam and Ocean, and the bridge is back open and traffic is flowing. But you go across the street to this building here, and this building, just about all the window panes have been busted in. This is the front door. This is what's called the Elbow District. And you look at the front panes, all busted in. You go along the side here at Ocean, busted, 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 busted. They came through, and as you can see, the building is under some sort of renovation, but they came through and did considerable damage. And it's not just along Ocean, this entire block, and I don't know what the size of the crowd was during the time of the day that this may have happened. But all along this side here on Adams, you go down and you find busted windows, busted windows. Clearly they came through and they left their mark, did considerable damage here in downtown. It is no longer raining. There's hardly anyone on the street. So now we have a clear view as to what the protesters that is the ones who were not being peaceful, as to what they were up to, and they wanted to send a message, but I don't know what the message is. What kind of message is this sent? That we can destroy someone's property? I don't know, but that's a situation here at the corner of Ocean and Adams, and we're just driving around, and it's alarming when you come up on things like this. And just like the lady that drove by in her SUV, you ask yourself, why? Why? You know, she was pointing to the DuPont Center. She says, they help my kids. Why would someone do that? Because now this nonprofit has to come and replace that window pane at its expense. The property owner here has to replace all of these window panes at his or her expense. And they're gone. And I, again, don't know what the message is. Jeannie?
Well, Ken, I'm never going to forget, you're just showing us what we just saw, what we were hoping had not happened, and saying busted, busted, busted. Property damage. People do not need any more expenses right now. Nonprofits are already hurting during this COVID-19 pandemic. The donations are way down. Some groups tell me they're down 50, 60%. And like you pointed out, now they have to, at no fault of their own, try to fix things and spend money. Some may have insurance, some may not. Just to come into our town, whether they were from here or a mix of people from out of town, that's infuriating. And we just hope that there aren't more cases of people injured that we don't know about. But I have to say, in a way, I'm kind of not surprised. I was hoping we wouldn't see that property damage, but we had heard earlier from the sheriff that protesters were throwing rocks at first responders, so we knew they had hard objects. We saw them busting out the backs and fronts and sides of patrol cars, so I'm afraid that might have been inevitable that there was property damage, but maybe it's just limited to that area, already bad enough. So let's go now to Haley Harrison. The reason we're going out to Haley is because she is at the town center, and earlier tonight we heard the sheriff saying that they are monitoring hot spots around town. So far had not seen any problems, but they wanted to have a major police presence, a strong presence at the town center in case something would flare up. So what are you seeing out there right now on a Saturday night?
Well, hey, Jeannie, Town Center has been very quiet this evening. I've been here for about the last hour and a half, and I've barely seen any foot traffic, any traffic going in and out of Town Center. Retail stores are closed now, and again, no foot traffic for the most part this evening. We're here because, again, there have been rumors that the protests from downtown might move to Town Center area. So we've seen JSO and mall security sprinkled around the area just in case protests did kind of move this way from downtown. But again, it's been very quiet here the past hour and a half that I've been here.
The town center, I think, behind you, you're not necessarily in the town center, and I understand there's a reason for your position at the moment.
Right, Jeannie. So we're actually kind of a little away from the town center. There's a lot of security in the Apple Store, Nordstrom, Dick's Sporting Goods area. But we're away from that area because security, when we were setting up earlier, security told us that we are not allowed to film on the premises, so then we moved away again, and we're almost shooed away by another mall security, or I guess retail store security that's been monitoring the shops around Town Center. But luckily we struck a deal with them and said, you know, we're covering this because there is no activity out here. So it's kind of a way that we could get our spot here in Town Center to let you guys know that it has been quiet here the last hour and a half.
Important to give an accurate picture of what's going on, especially since we've heard in other cities that some of the looting has specifically been in cell phone stores, and people have been just stealing cell phones as they busted down the windows. So thank you very much, Heather. We appreciate your being out there tonight and giving us a picture from the town center. So we're going to stop our coverage for just right now, but not online. It'll be on firstcoastnews.com and also, of course, on our First Coast News app. We will rejoin you again tonight at 11 o'clock. And at that point, you'll see reporters with all sorts of new video and new interviews they've been gathering all evening long. But as you've been watching, thank you for being with us tonight and being patient with our coverage. We've been doing our best to show you what's been going on in downtown Jacksonville. What started out as a peaceful protest in the early dinner hour, just right outside Maxwell House with even families, about 1,200 people. It was an organized event, and then it concluded. And then after that, as the protesters marched down the street toward the Main Street Bridge, things got out of hand. Tear gas, rocks at police officers, busting out windows. 2 police officers pinned under 50 protesters had to be saved. The sheriff saying that they could have been beaten to death. 1 police officer stabbed in the neck. A violent night that we didn't want to see in Jacksonville. But calls for justice, calls for change, calls for JSO to sit down and talk about issues that have been bothering people here for quite a while. So what's going to happen after tonight will depend on our city leaders and all of us to get together and make sure it doesn't repeat, and maybe there can be some solutions. But we do appreciate your joining us. We welcome your comments on our social media pages, and we'll see you tonight on First Coast News at 11, just in less than half an hour.
This has been a First Coast News special report.
Jeannie's mic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mike check, Anthony's mic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hey, this is Lauren's microphone. Check in Lauren's microphone.
Yep.
What's that?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Mic check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Robert.
Tonight, a peaceful march in Jacksonville ended with an officer stabbed, windows smashed, and police cars set on fire. We have total team coverage from across our city, with cameras on the ground and drones in the air. Frustrated with very few answers, where do we go from here? Will there be unity? Can there be change? When will enough be enough? Jacksonville's cry for justice, next at 11.
Always on your side. This is First Coast News at 11.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony Austin. We're continuing to follow the events unfolding in downtown Jacksonville after a peaceful protest took a turn.
We know at least one Jacksonville officer was taken to a local hospital. Sheriff Mike Williams confirming that that officer was slashed in the neck by a protester.
And the events here in Jacksonville were among dozens of other cities as well across the country. Sheriff Williams says at least 1,200 people had gathered in the empty lot outside of the sheriff's office around 3 o'clock this afternoon, and there was a coordinated and peaceful protest that marched down Bay Street. But once that protest cleared, according to the sheriff, right as the sun began to set, that's when a few hundred people stuck around and began having confrontations with the officers down there.
Keeping an eye on the developments all across Jacksonville right now. Our crew's in the field, and we're going to head right now to Ken and Merrill with the latest. And Ken, what are you seeing at this hour in downtown Jacksonville?
Anthony, in all honesty, it's relatively quiet. We just drove around the city and it's pretty quiet. It appears that all the protesters who were here earlier have been pushed out of the city. We don't know where they went, but they're gone. Nevertheless, they left behind significant damage. I'm here on Adams Street between Ocean and Noonan behind me, and this is the Five and Dime Theater Company. As you can see, someone's been here recently to board up the window because whatever was here is completely shattered. It's on the ground, and it's in this entire block between Ocean and Adams. We were over earlier at the Hayden Burns Library, which is now the Jesse DuPont Ball Center, which is a nonprofit. That building has also been damaged. So considerable damage since the protesters on their way out. And it was a pretty large crowd. We've got some pictures from earlier today when this protest began as a peaceful protest. About 1,200 or so showed up, some of them with their kids, kind of a family environment. But within that group, after a couple of hours, that group separated and they left, and a couple of hundred stayed behind and created problems for law enforcement. We spoke with Sheriff Mike Williams and Mayor Lenny Curry, and this is what they had to say.
Around 6:30, roughly 200 people that had hung around since the initial protest began to confront police officers. They began to throw rocks. They attacked several police officers. They vandalized several police cars, attempting to light them on fire, breaking windows. I don't have a direct count as of yet, but a lot of direct action against the first responders that were out there protecting that peaceful protest from earlier today. We had one officer who was stabbed or slashed in the neck and is currently at the hospital. So with that, we've responded with our mobile field force. We have SWAT elements out here, and obviously, as you can imagine, we have a number of additional officers out here. We're also continuing to follow a lot of social media activity about other potential hotspots in the city. Most of those have not come to fruition, although we are responding.
Now, when I asked the sheriff about will there be a curfew, he said that was being considered. It all depended on what kind of activity tomorrow may bring or what may happen throughout the evening. I can tell you that even though Jacksonville has now resumed to its former self, if you will, a quiet downtown tonight, police are still watching. They're still standing guard. We're a block away from the supervisor of elections office. Over there, they're boarding up the office. But they did considerable damage in this block right here. And if I can walk, my photographer, Mike Bunker, is with me. That's the Five and Dime Theater Company. Back here is a vacant building where they did considerable damage, and it's under renovation. And it may set back the developer or whomever is developing the building considerably, because what they did was busted up every window that there is. And I don't know what the cost of replacing these window panes, but look at this front door. It's all busted up. And then you come along the side of the building, completely shattered. Right here you can see anger, I don't know what they use. Right here, completely destroyed. Some of the damage that those protesters left behind, these property owners will now have to fix at their expense. That's the situation here. Overall, it's stopped raining and it's quiet, and everyone seemed to have left downtown. Back to you.
Thanks. You be careful out there. Thank you so much. And just within the last hour, I spoke with community activist Ben Frazier, who organized the original peaceful protest tonight downtown, and here is what he had to say.
To be clear, we do not condone violence, and we are very concerned about the welfare of everyone who lives here, regardless of race, creed, or color. There are many wrongs. The sheriff has been deceptive and dishonest with regard to body cam footage. He has refused to release the footage to the people who own it, the public. They have hindered the public's right to know with regard to the body cam footage. Questionable police-involved shootings. Questionable racially disproportionate police-involved shootings. Excessive use of force. Brutality on the part of JSO directed at people of color and communities of color.
So once again, you just heard from community activist Ben Frazier there, and Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry mentioned the reason for today's peaceful demonstration, saying in a tweet, quote, "Many today peacefully made their voices clear for justice. We hear you and will work with you, but those who remain causing damage and attacking first responders will not be tolerated."
And take a look at some of this video we got from Doug Freeman of several people taking swings at a JSO vehicle in downtown, busting the windows out. You can see the back windshield of the car busted out there as well. That man hitting the side windows. And we are seeing a lot of pictures being posted on social media at this point. So let's take a look here at just a few of them, because the scene downtown was just, I mean, if you were looking through it, was unreal. I mean, take a look here. You can see people surrounding a JSO vehicle. We did see even posts of fire underneath one of the vehicles. This is from Khalif saying peaceful protest against Jacksonville police turns violent. And we know that violence kind of started to begin around 6:30 this evening. This person saying Jacksonville didn't even protest right. Obviously implying the things that took a turn. It went from nonviolent protest to a violent protest. And here we have from Juliana, a peaceful protest in Jacksonville today ended with the protesters being tear gassed. And we did see quite a few posts of what looked like tear gas being kind of around the crowd. And also someone complimenting Lenny Curry and JSO for protecting Jacksonville. So a lot of comments right now, Jeannie, on social media.
And a lot more are still coming in, and we invite your opinions to join in the conversation as well. Katie, thank you so much. And the peaceful protest that we're talking about that began this afternoon in downtown Jacksonville drew a crowd of 1,000 or more, about 1,200 we're told. And for hours, there were no signs of trouble. Those demonstrators had been calling for greater transparency from Jacksonville's Sheriff's Office in police shootings. So let's take a look here. Some recent shootings. Last December, a JSO officer shot and killed Jamie Johnson during a traffic stop. JSO says Johnson was shot and killed during or after driving his car toward the officer while reaching for a gun. Police have not released any body camera video in this case. In January, a JSO officer shot and killed a 20-year-old suspect in a case involving an undercover investigation. Officers say when they moved to arrest 3 men, one pulled a gun. Reginald Boston was killed in the gunfire. JSO's official transparency webpage shows 9 officer-involved shootings so far this year in 2020. The most recent was a fatal shooting just this past Tuesday. Now, in those incidents, 10 suspects were shot. 5 of them were killed.
And as we've mentioned, the protests and rioting has seemingly calmed down now. So we want to go out to Robert Bradfield. And Robert, just kind of tell me what you're seeing right now at your location in downtown.
We are unaware of specifically where they are heading, but again, you can see several members of this team now loading up into this vehicle. We are on Bay Street. This is just
I'm here at Town Center. The unrest in downtown tonight was expected, rumored to move here to Town Center, but as you can see right now, it has been quiet. Just a little bit of car traffic, really no foot traffic. We've been driving around the past couple of hours in Town Center in the Apple Store area, the Dick's Sporting Good area, where we've seen JSO vehicles and mall police around the area, just security in case there was any unrest that moved here from downtown. But luckily, we have seen no protesters here tonight after the rain has stopped.
Haley, thank you very much. All right, a warning tonight as we look at the spreading unrest nationwide that some of the images we're seeing may be considered disturbing. Now, the wave of demonstrations began in Minneapolis on Monday with video of an officer, the officer who's since been fired and charged, kneeling on the neck of a man named George Floyd for nearly 9 minutes. Now, Floyd died, and that officer has been charged with murder. 3 other officers who also pinned Floyd down are under investigation as well. Now, Minneapolis is on its 5th consecutive night of unrest, and police fired tear gas on demonstrators out after the 9 p.m. curfew there. Again, that's Minneapolis. Now, in Tallahassee, a driver in a red pickup was seen plowing through a crowd that had surrounded that truck. Now, surprisingly, no reports of any injuries at this point, but the crowd did beat up on the truck further down the road. So a lot of images, Jeannie, coming out that can be very disturbing from all this.
And they are disturbing. A curfew, in fact, went into effect at 10 p.m. This is in Miami-Dade County. You can see the unrest there. There were skirmishes between police and demonstrators in the streets. The mayor said officers fired tear gas after a few cars were vandalized. We asked Mayor Curry tonight, what about a curfew for Jacksonville? He said it is being discussed, but there is no decision at this point. So stay with us. We're going to check in one more time with our Ken Amaro, who is live downtown, and we'll have more coverage on the protests and the rioting that happened in downtown Jacksonville tonight.
Mic check 1 2 3 4 5. Let's try it again. Mic check 1 2.
We're continuing our coverage tonight at 11 about the peaceful protests that took a turn. I want to go back out now to Ken Amaro, and I know, Ken, where you're at, you did see some damage in that area.
That's correct, Anthony. I'm here at 40 East Adams at the Jesse Ball DuPont Center, which was the former Hayden Burns Library. And this is a significant damage area. You can see they've turned on the lights indoors, so now you have a better view as to how gaping this hole is, where someone pushed in, or I don't know how they did it, to be honest, but caused significant damage here to a double pane glass. It's two panes, as you can see, but it's shattered all the way down. There's nothing here but crumble. Clearly tempered glass that if it was going to break, it would shatter into pieces. But look at the size of the glass. So you can see significant damage to this piece of property. And across the street over here at this, what used to be a former fire station, but it's now personal property. You can see the windows on the garage doors are all busted and graffiti is on the wall. It just seems like a significant amount of damage was done here in the block on Ocean Street, Ocean and Adams. JSO officers are out here and they're making their report. They not only look at this damage, they look at the one across the street. So now they're doing their assessment and filling out the report as to how severe the damage is. Damage caused by some of the protesters who stayed behind after the majority of them dispersed for the evening. But that's the situation here at Adams right now. The street is very quiet. We've had a few spectators come by, shaking their heads in disbelief, but the situation here, the street is very quiet, most of downtown. We've driven around several blocks, no protesters in sight. Back to you.
Well, Ken, good evening. I will take it from here. We are on the steps of the Jacksonville Police Memorial Building, and I just want to mention earlier during the live shot previously, we saw about 12 or maybe even 14 or 16 JSO officers walking out of the Sally Port here. Unclear of where they were going. However, they were getting into this certain vehicle, and then they headed back toward away from downtown. Again, unclear specifically where they were heading, but we saw about 14 or 16 of them. Again, we are on the steps here of JSO, and I want to just step out of the way briefly so you can see some chalk on the walls here that says "We Can't Breathe." That, of course, in reference to George Floyd in Minneapolis. And this is where that peaceful protest started earlier today. I did speak with the mom of Jamie Johnson on the phone earlier tonight. He was shot and killed by a JSO officer in December, and she says the type of rioting or protesting that we saw specifically today, she says it needs to be a peaceful protest, and she wanted to remind everybody of her son's name, again, Jamie Johnson, and she says we all can do better. From what she heard and saw today, she says Jacksonville deserves better. Again, we are live here on the steps of JSO, and again, the sign saying "We Can't Breathe," marked, of course, by what happened in Minneapolis. But as Ken Amaro has said, we can also tell you here downtown, the streets right now are empty. Live downtown, Robert Bradfield, First Coast News, on your side.
Robert, thank you so much. All this on a Saturday night, halfway through the weekend. We're going to check in with Lauren Rautenkrantz and find out what the weather forecast is for the rest of the weekend in just a minute.
Now, your most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, sponsored by AC Designs.
Just Lauren Rautenkranz here. We had a few storms that fired up this evening thanks to leftover heat and instability from that very hot summery afternoon. We've got a stationary boundary parked up to our front, and it's going to continue to slide to the southeast as we head into our Sunday, eventually crossing the First Coast. And we will see the drier air from it, and in fact cooler air as well, but we've got to wait a couple of days for that to arrive. Let's go ahead and zoom on in here to the First Coast, because across southeast Georgia we're quiet, but we do have some downpours that are just on the outskirts of Ware and Pierce and Glenn counties, and they're going to continue to sink toward the southeast within the next hour or so, and then we will quiet down in that neck of the woods. Also out toward Keystone, just beginning to move over the Highway 301 corridor into Putnam County. We've got some lightning strikes still that are out there. Again, we've reached the 90s today, so this is really typical of summertime when we see the heat that gets so warm in the afternoon, and then those storms are able to continue to be fueled by temperatures in the 80s this time of night if they didn't get cooled by the rain later on in the afternoon. So courtesy of Weatherstone, we've got some pretty cool cameras across the area, including this one out toward the St. Johns River. This is at the JFRD Station 40, and it's just as you're heading west out of Mayport, if you're familiar with the boat dock out there. A few raindrops on the camera earlier, but it has since dried out. Out in St. Augustine, just some clouds, but generally dark out there. Really not good for the stargazing this evening as well. So how about as we head into our Sunday? We're going to start off dry with a nice sunrise, as a matter of fact, but the clouds are going to build quickly ahead of that front as it's passing through the area. Now, because it's going to be moving through in the heat of the day, it's going to help